the inciting incident in a way is the button, and her decision not to just collect it or, stick it back or, or flick it into the drain and, on it went. So, of course, these are spoilers. I can't say this stuff. Yeah.
Hey, Den of Geek fans, Aaron Sagers here, and we are at South by Southwest 2024, and I am surrounded by the creatives and cast of So Torn. So Torn. I just got that. But I really enjoyed it. I love this. And Freddy, you are co-writer and director of this film, expanded from a short. So let me start there. What was it about the short film where you're like, you know what? I have more to give with this story. I'm going to pull that thread a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's really interesting because the short film was actually my application film for college. So I made it when I was in high school, and I was just looking. I wanted to go to film school, and I was just looking at every film school has like a different prompt. But ultimately, I knew AFI was my number one, and that's their prompt was to tell a story about a change of heart. So my dad and I brainstormed this concept of what could we do, and we came up with a So Torn short. We shot it on one day, just for very little money, not thinking much of it, and we sent it around. And unexpectedly, it landed in the hands of my hero, Joel Cohen, and he wanted to meet for coffee. And I was terrified because the film kind of has elements of No Country for Old Men in it. And I was like, I hope he's not going to say I ripped him off in any way. I was very anxious about that. But meeting with Joel was so important because he said you should turn this into a feature and do it the Blood Simple method and, do it independently, raise money through friends and family and shoot this thing. And so my dad and I immediately started writing the feature version of it, which was incredibly taxing. At first, it was a linear narrative. We did 22 drafts of a linear version of the story, and it just wasn't working. We were getting the same notes that we got on the first draft on the 22nd. So we just immediately started from scratch again, and that's when we came up with this three-choice narrative, and that really excited us.
Yeah, and Eve, you play this character, Barbara, who is this mobile seamstress that exists in this world that runs afoul of Caleb's criminal element, and Caroline and Kay, you guys are involved in this quirky little town. But at the core of this, your character, she has this fierceness to her and yet doesn't say a whole lot and is incredibly resourceful. I want to learn about the creation of this character. Is there some sort of diehard MacGyver background to her? How did she come to be this person at the beginning of the film?
When I first got the part, Freddy talked to me a lot about backstory and kind of because a lot of what she does is drastic, and she's kind of fighting for her life the whole time. One thing that Freddy was really great at was really finding the backstory to drive that and her reasoning for making every single decision. And we talked a lot about her relationship with her mother and how she's lived her life for her mother, and that is what's driving her onwards constantly, and she is very bright. And so I think that having that drive behind it all allowed it to be truthful and made, to me anyway, every scene and every decision she makes is totally rational, and it just makes a lot of sense, I think, and then makes it easier to play in that way. I'm not sure if that answered the question. Was that the question?
Well, she's able to construct these Rube Goldbergian setups, and it's amazing to watch unfold on film. So I guess, Freddy, is there something to her background that would lead to this kind of skill set? But also, when setting up these stunts, what was that? What was the process there? Was that a CGI kind of setup, or?
It's that's my dad and I just love thread too much, as you can probably tell from the movie. I mean, we just spend hours in our backyard with like cardboard guns and thread and trying to make these things work practically. Now, of course, the film is very heightened, and you could say, well, could that really work in real life? We did want them to work practically, so we could actually shoot them practically on set to an extent. So we really just tried to make them work as much as we could, and we shot videos of them because they're very complex, and circulated the videos, which are kind of shot for shot visual storyboards of those rigs, and I gave them to the whole cast, specifically Eve, so she could practice, blowing dart guns or thread dart guns around the house and whatnot. I think you were doing that, right? You're scaring your family.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. He sent me. He made the most detailed videos of how to do every single thing that Barbara does in the film, him and his dad, and sent me these videos about like a week or two, I would say, before filming. So I was practicing those at home, like cutting up the pieces of paper and making the little darts and everything like that. And but they're so specific. Every single video he sent me was so specific and clear that it made it a lot easier, and so I felt confident going in that I could do them after a lot of practice.
Isn't she fantastic? She didn't even know how to sew a button before we started talking, and she's blowing these dart guns. Yeah. Anyways.
And now she can take down a criminal syndicate with just a box of thread. Speaking of the criminal syndicate, Caleb, your character, we see these 3 timelines or possible timelines unfold with Barbara as she gets involved with different characters. And your character is this constant, this criminal. Is he a bad guy, would you say?
I think sometimes good and bad can depend on your circumstances. I think he's a good guy that is stuck in a bad situation, and so he's had to make bad choices. But I think he's a good person at heart, and that's really where his struggle is.
And Carolyn and Kay, your characters help flesh out, actually, I would say the entire town setting. You said Coen Brothers, and I think that it feels like a season of Fargo, but it also feels like something out of Twin Peaks. So your characters are these kind of colorful tapestry of this town. Talk a little bit about the development of those characters and what Freddy said he wanted you to bring to the table. Why don't you start?
Well, I'm so excited because I got to play this woman who has 3 different jobs. She came to this town and she was skiing, and then she didn't have enough money to go home, and they said, well, why don't you be the justice of the peace? We can give you some money for that. And then they said, well, you could also be sheriff, and I have all these things I got to do. And anyway, it was what a gift of a part. It was just wonderful to be this person in this town who had all this power and couldn't get her gun out without without tearing her clothes.
Yeah. Well, and your character, the bride-to-be.
Yeah, I'm Bridezilla. I had a lot of fun being Bridezilla. She's, I think she's marooned there as well. I do think this environment actually is emblematic of almost any small town anywhere. It could also be any small town in the United States, except, of course, we shot in Switzerland, which for us was extra special because it really was Heidiland where we were, and there were cowbells and everything going on. It just looked so beautiful. For her, it's all about her and no one else, and it's her 3rd wedding, and she's going to have to get it right, and so therefore everything unfolds from there. And what I do love is this moment where she actually stares down John Lynch, the crime boss, and she has no clue who he is, and she really doesn't care, and she gets Barbara out of there. But yeah, she was a lot of fun to play.
Bridezilla, yeah, and then we see another shade of her as well. A couple of shades, yeah. So I want to learn a little bit more about the balance with this film because it is clever. We see some very fun things happening, and I've seen the word twee be used in application of this film, and I don't think that's a bad thing. And it's thrilling, it's fun. So how do you kind of manage all of that to keep the charm and yet keep the suspense and the thrill going? Talk about that consideration.
Yeah, it was something that was always on our mind when we were writing the script, and because it's always so hard for me to kind of explain what the tone is on the page. So my dad and I really tried to think of any possible way we could explain that tone, be it visually or through the score. So, for example, our incredible composer, Jacob Tardine, he made a lot of the music beforehand, and he was even on set, composing on set. And I made sure everyone was able to listen to his music because it does have that element of it has the absurd comedy, but also the tension that we wanted to capture, despite how heightened everything is and how bizarre this world is. So it was a tricky balance, and we made these videos for everyone to kind of figure out what these rigs were. So it was kind of like piecing together the tone through these other elements that worked with the script.
And Eve, Barbara is not a character, as I said before, not really a character that is a talker. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And she has emotions. She gets afraid, and yet she's kind of a survivor, really. Talk about your process, just kind of what were you thinking of? What kind of internal monologue was taking place as you were fleshing out this character?
I think that finding the emotional drive was something that was really necessary for me to be, particularly in the more heightened moments or the more emotional moments, being able to, and that's why it was so helpful that we did discuss the importance of the relationship with her mother, because that allowed me to always have that kind of truth to it, but also, even though she doesn't have a lot of dialogue, there's always so much going on for her to react to, and Freddy was very specific in what were the moments to hit in every scene, and then he let me play beyond that, and he was very collaborative. But I always knew, even though I wasn't speaking, there was kind of like an internal dialogue that I knew what that scene was to have, so that made it very easy to have that kind of come across without the external dialogue.
Yeah, and it most certainly does, because you can see her eyes are always kind of working as well. You know, the question I had as I was watching is, as we see one decision impact this entire path, pulling the thread, what do you guys think? Do you, without giving too much away, was there disagreement on set about, well, which is the right choice here? Which is the best path? Is it the path of action or inaction or another path entirely? Talk about those discussions that all of you guys had about what's the right way to go.
Well, I mean, the script was so good when we saw it that there wasn't many discussions around the creative element of it. The thing that was very obvious on set was the theme of choices really represented who Freddy is as a director, because as you can see in the film, his choices are so strong. I mean, he's an incredible filmmaker already. I remember when I first saw the short of this, I told my agent, I was like, I think this guy's the next Coen brother. And I was like, I want to be the Steve Buscemi to him. And but the choices on set were very clear. And even the idea of, like, when he mentioned showing us the music ahead of time, that's very rare for a director to do. He's so prepared when we got on for the first day that we just trusted the script. The choices were in the details, but that's what was so fun.
My main question, of course, was how's the button going to work? Because that's the inciting incident, in a way, is the button and her decision not to just collect it or, stick it back or, or flick it into the drain and, on it went. So, of course... Oh, these are spoilers. I can't say this stuff.
Stop,
but I just quickly want to say the whole thing about the button. I did kind of assume this is going to be something that was done later in post, because how the hell do you get a button to do this extraordinary 180
Circle the
and
drain,
into a thing?
yeah.
And I asked them, and they said, well, yeah, we're going to do it in a minute. I said, oh, really? And they picked up a piece of cardboard, and two pieces of cardboard stuck together, and this sort of little slide was pasted in the middle, and one side was written "Do not lose," and the other side of the cardboard was "This way up," and that was what they used. Two pieces of cardboard to do that extraordinary thing. So it just goes to show that you don't need a ton of money to make extraordinary things. And the same with all the thread. Every single thing worked. All that, everything across on the ceiling, and it was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Really amazing. Anyway.
But it's 300 takes though too, so it's a compromise.
It's a lot of button work.
Exactly.
The button's part of the union now, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, which, I guess, show of hands then, because we don't want to give too much away, but there are these scenarios. Who thinks that Barbara should have taken, scenario one, let's say, we could say the perfect crime? Okay, call the cops. Who thinks that's the way? That's the right end. Okay, call the
That's my part of
She
it.
says that she plays the cop and the justice of the peace.
I'm
and
not
everything.
in the other
Yeah. So,
I'm for perfect crime.
Perfect crime.
Just the problem is that what happens?
what about Drive Away? Is
I
that
think that's it.
that's it?
I think that's it
Yeah.
for me.
That's
Even
it.
though, well, I don't want to go into the next one,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think well, again, I'm just so in awe of all these performances, but in that one in particular, I think there's an emotional catharsis that happens that I always get really excited when I see, and when I saw it on set, it was really powerful.
You're abstaining from this vote. What do you think?
I would take the money. I don't know what y'all talking about. I'd grab the money and I would drive away.
Oh, you would have had a whole other choice.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, he's added another one in there.
Try.
I have to say, I don't know which choice I would have picked out of all of those. So I think that's part of the joy of this kind of multiple option type of film. I guess finally, with this character of the mobile seamstress Barbara, is there more to this world and to her story? Because to me, I'm sitting there watching it and I'm like, I want the mobile seamstress John Wick franchise. I want a whole universe out of this.
Yeah.
Is there more to her story?
I would love to write more about her story. Yeah, I think there's just so much fun. I mean, I love, even though I was complaining about all the backyard thread work, I could do that for years. So there's definitely more to come, and I'm glad to hear that you wanted to see that.
Eve, do you want more from the mobile seamstress?
Definitely, yeah. And I want to work with Freddy way more, so that would be amazing.
All right. Well, So Torn, it is multiple potential realities unfolding, and it's definitely a fun ride. You thread the needle on the film.
Thank you
So
very much.
I don't know if there's more sewing seamstress puns I could work in there, but thank you guys so much for joining us at the Den of Geek Studios here at South by Southwest.